Hey everybody, welcome back to Touchy Reactions, fans of Sabaton. Welcome back. We are going to be covering today another Sabaton history lesson. This one's called Fathers of Light and Darkness, Rockets and Explosives. Sounds awesome. But before we get into that, I just want to touch on the latest news from the band. About 2 weeks ago, they let us know that longtime lead guitarist Tommy Johansson is going to be leaving the band and going on his own journey to do his own thing. It's an amicable split from what I can tell by what they posted on Instagram. And he's actually going to stay with the band for a little bit while there's a transition to their new guitarist, which this morning they announced on YouTube with this little video right here.
Okay, so how about you put those camo pants back on?
Yeah, actually I've been missing those pants a lot. I'm back.
All right, so Tobler England is back, and just a little blast from the past, getting the boys back together, and I'm sure it's exciting for him to be back with the group, and looking forward to seeing them in concert with their new lead guitarist, Tobler England. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this Sabaton history lesson. This is Fathers of Light and Darkness, Rockets and Explosives, Sabaton History 126. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Pat from Sabaton.
And I'm Indy Nidell.
And you're watching Sabaton History channel?
Nope. Today, actually, you're watching the Sabaton Science channel.
Wow.
Yeah. Wars are terrible, beyond a doubt. They cause enormous and even immeasurable amounts of suffering and death. But it is indisputable.
Hold on, I got to talk about why Indy's dressed as Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken. Sorry, Indy, not a huge fan of this look.
But they are also an accelerator for science and technology. A nation at war allocates major resources to its scientists and calls on them to come up with better and more sophisticated inventions to help them win. In this way, some inventions made for the good of mankind can be weaponized for death and destruction. Of course, sometimes it is the other way around. An idea first designed to kill people is turned around to benefit all mankind. And then there's just man's insatiable curiosity that led to the splitting of the atom, which led to Sabaton songs like Saboteurs and Nuclear Attack. But is there something like amoral science? We already also did an episode for the song Father about Fritz Haber. So let's have a look at some of the other fathers in the last few centuries. The Napoleonic era was one of constant warfare and international conflict, but it was also the age of enlightenment and intellectual life flourished. Napoleon himself was a big advocate for the advancement of the sciences.
By the way, Napoleon, that new movie that just came out with, who was it, Joaquin Phoenix as the lead? Horrible. I went and watched it with the greatest of hope because it was done by the same director who did Gladiator, and I thought it's going to tell an amazing story. God, that movie was boring as hell. Sorry for anybody whose feelings are hurt by that.
And he made sure that scholars and engineers accompanied his armies wherever they went. Inventors from all over were encouraged to bring forth their theories and experiments, and a scientific infrastructure was created to mutually support the scholars of different branches. There was, for example, Alessandro Volta, who invented the first electric batteries, or Claude-Louis Berthollet, who brought forward a systematic study of chlorine and ammonia, or Dominique Jean Larrey, who became known as the father of battlefield surgery. He and his colleagues would even go out on active battlefields with bullets and shrapnel flying around to save as many soldiers as possible, no matter their uniform. It is said that rumors of his presence on a battlefield even halted cannon fire from both the British and the Prussians as they feared to hit the famed surgeon. Should the uniform be important to a scientist? Or are their inventions designed to help only one side and not the other? Although England and France were very much at war then, many of their scientists did not believe in taking sides. Edward Jenner, for example, the pioneer of vaccination who developed a smallpox vaccine, was strongly opposed to this kind of thing. An Englishman, He said to the National Institute of France in 1803, the sciences are never at war. He was the noble philanthropist and was hailed by the world's leaders as an inspiration for all mankind. When Jenner wrote to Napoleon in 1805 to release two of his friends, Napoleon allegedly exclaimed, "Ah, Jenner, I can refuse nothing to this man." In terms of paradoxical inventors, Alfred Nobel might be the poster boy. Born in Stockholm in 1833, Nobel pursued his interests in engineering and chemistry early on, rose through academia, and engaged with important inventors and industrialists from Paris to St. Petersburg. His goal was simply solving the shortcomings of the world. One common problem in the mining and construction industries was the underwhelming effectiveness of explosives. Widely used at the time was black powder, which isn't all that different from gunpowder, just more flammable, but is a low-yield explosive. There was a much more powerful explosive on the market, liquid nitroglycerin, but this was really unstable and had caused many deadly accidents. In 1862, Nobel decided to try his hand with it and see if he could find a stabilizing solution, so he built his own nitroglycerin factory. A first major step in the right direction was the invention of the detonator cap. This was basically a plug filled with a small charge of black powder or mercury fulminate that, attached to a larger charge of nitroglycerin, could be ignited by heat or electric shock. While this made the detonation of nitroglycerin at least much more predictable, it did not solve the problem of handling and transporting it. In fact, Nobel's factory blew up soon afterwards, killing one of his brothers and several other people. Undeterred by this loss, Nobel continued his research. In 1867, he finally achieved his breakthrough. By mixing nitroglycerin with silicious earth, the substance became solid without losing its explosive power. Nobel named his invention dynamite, from the Greek word dunamis, meaning power, and the Swedish suffix it.
I had no idea that's where dynamite came from. Amazing. I didn't know that was basically nitroglycerin mixed with earth. Wow. Thank you, Sabaton History.
So he called it dynamit in Swedish, right? He was a Swede. Power it very much had. Soon everyone engaged in building tunnels, canals, or railway lines was using dynamite, and Nobel's name grew to worldwide fame. It was not long, however, until the invention was also used to destroy lives, and armies all over the world acquired dynamite for their own purposes. But can we make Nobel responsible for how others used his invention?
No.
Well, until the end of his life, he would continue to improve on his discoveries. For example, he invented a precursor of cordite, a smokeless powder, and blasting gelatin, which is basically a plastic-like mixture of nitroglycerin and nitrocellulose. But what was to be his legacy? Well, he got a little foreshadowing. See, when another of his brothers died in 1888, a French newspaper confused him with Alfred and wrote, "The Merchant of Death is finally dead." We do not know if Nobel had any sort of Ebenezer Scrooge-like epiphany and worried about his posthumous reputation, but he was quite the paradox in his personal life. He was reclusive and prone to depression, but he was also a people magnet when it came to business or new ideas. He was also very much without scruples when it came down to the use of his inventions, but he was also a benefactor of the arts, a humanitarian, and a philanthropist. And when his own death came in 1896, his will stipulated that vast amounts of his fortune were to be spent to create a worldwide award, one that would be granted to scientists and intellectuals for their service to humanity. And as we all know, to this day, the Nobel Prize is awarded to those whose work has benefited this world.
Wow. So, damn. I always, you always hear about the Nobel Prize, and I didn't know the history of it. And it seems like this is Alfred Nobel's way of, once he realized that he was known as the Merchant of Death, he was like, I want my legacy to be something better. So he created this foundation to further the betterment of mankind and put his name on it so that when we think of Nobel, we're thinking of the Peace Prize, we're thinking of, all the achievements and all the different sciences and all that stuff. And he successfully, in my opinion, changed his legacy by doing that. Amazing. I had no idea where that all came from. All right. I don't know that Sabaton song. Somebody let me know in the comments what that song is.
But let's get away from this world for a minute. A great man once said, well, many times said, space, the final frontier. Wernher von Braun knew from an early age what he wanted to do. With a keen interest in experimenting with fireworks and the mechanics of propellants, he pursued an inventor's career by studying physics and engineering in Berlin and Zurich in the early 1930s. He attended the prestigious Rocket Science Club of Germany, where some of the greatest scientific minds of the generation met for debates and experiments. The technological marvels of planes and automobiles had taken over the world, changing travel dramatically, but there were always visionaries who thought about just how much farther they could push the technology envelope. Braun and the Rocket Science Club were sure that air and land travel would surely benefit from rocket propulsion, and that high-energy fuels could break the limitations of speed and distance. Of course, the explosive nature of octane-fueled rockets traveling through the air before bursting on the ground drew some serious attention from the military, especially once the Nazis took over. Rocket-propelled artillery was one of those bold new ideas into which the generals put a lot of hope. Braun was soon recruited to work in the new research center of Kummersdorf, an old artillery range south of Berlin. This was the birthplace of the first liquid-fueled rockets, the A-1 and A-2. Just as Braun received his doctorate in physics, they successfully launched two A-2 rockets over the North Sea. Adolf Hitler himself visited the site and was impressed by the possibilities of rocketry, yet not really for its potential to uplift humanity as a whole. Still, impressing Hitler in Nazi Germany was a sure way to secure a lot of funding and assistance, and that's a goal of every scientist. Okay, well, not the impressing Hitler part. A new dedicated rocket testing facility on the island of Usedom was constructed, where Dr. von Braun would be...
Look, I don't speak whatever language that is. German, I'm guessing?
Testing facility on the island of Usedom.
That's Usedom? If you ask me to spell Usedom, there's no way I'm starting it with a P-E-E-N-E-M-U-N. None of that would be in there at all. Maybe the D might be in there. Wow. Unless that's the name of the facility and that's not the word Usedom, I don't know.
Was constructed, where Dr. von Braun would be technical director. From 1937 to 1945, his research teams created the world's first liquid-fueled ballistic missile, the A-4, which was the first man-made object to reach space. Designated the V-2, it was numbered second of Hitler's vengeance weapons after the V-1 flying bomb. These were supposed to turn the tide in the losing war. The rocket was able to carry a 900-kilo warhead, first to Britain, and one day maybe even across the Atlantic. But had Braun made a deal with the devil? He did join the Nazi Party and was promoted to major in the SS, but he was also arrested in March 1944 after several months of surveillance and accused of treason and intending to escape to England.
This sounds just like Oppenheimer's story in that they created this facility in the middle of nowhere for him to build his experiment and eventually end up being arrested for, treasonous stuff. He has a very similar story to Oppenheimer. Crazy.
Surveillance and accused of treason and intending to escape to England and being a communist sympathizer and trying to sabotage the V-2, and he was detained for 2 weeks, though he was not actually told any of those charges against him. The V-2 was built until the end of the war in the Nordhausen underground complex Dora, a concentration camp deep within the Harz Mountains. More than 8,000 people were killed in V-2 attacks. When the Allies entered Germany from all sides in 1945, Braun and his fellow scientists knew that they were wanted alive for their expertise, and both the Western Allies and the Soviet Union were in a race to scoop up as many high-profile Germans as possible. And it is true that when Braun and many of his fellow scientists managed to surrender to the Americans, they were not sent away to a POW camp, but ended up in laboratories. And also true, Braun would continue his work on the V-2 in the top-secret testing grounds in New Mexico. The
Is that where Oppenheimer was? Yes.
Americans, like the Soviets, were well aware of the potential of rocket science, especially with the development of the Cold War as the 40s turned into the 50s. From 1954 onward, Braun was in charge of the Guided Missile Development Division. See, while the German V-2 had been able to reach London in mere minutes, it had never achieved a target accuracy of better than 25 or 30 kilometers. But the Americans wanted an accuracy of 150 meters. Well, they wanted yards, but you get the idea. Although projects like the supersonic ramjet Comet never came to fruition, their research would be fundamental to intercontinental ballistic missiles in the future. In 1958, Braun's research teams launched the first American satellite into orbit as the space race kicked into gear. This was also the time when he became well known to the public, appearing in Collier's magazine and even on Disneyland TV. He was no longer a Nazi scientist whose invention had led to the death of thousands of civilians.
Yeah, convenient that we just kind of erased that part of his history because now he's someone to be revered. We'll just forget about that part where he was helping the Germans.
Was created by slave labor. No, he was the official space spokesman. Then the research on ballistic missiles able to take out whole cities was put on hold. And instead, it was all about boosting humans and satellites into space. He left the U.S. Army in 1960 and became director of NASA's new Marshall Space Flight Center, where he worked on the powerful Saturn V rocket, which would take the first humans to the moon. Wernher von Braun is often described as a 20th century Faust, a man who makes a deal with the devil, selling his soul to get the resources and the people needed to turn his visions into reality. But was there an alternative for him? Refusing Hitler and the Nazis? Or was there a moral obligation to sabotage his own work? Would the space program have achieved such heights without his skills? These questions can never be answered, of course, and he will remain, like Fritz Haber from a generation earlier, an ever-controversial father of both light and darkness. Per, I'd like to do the interview a little bit differently today. Now, we're talking about ingenuity.
Dreadnought. That was Dreadnought, yes.
And problem solving and stuff like that in the regular episode. What role, if any, does ingenuity and problem solving play with you guys when you're like on tour?
I think that touring was always a way, and bands was always quite creative in finding solutions to various things. You know, you want to show something, do something, and you need to invent something, because on the tour it doesn't work like in a movie studio, for example,
right,
or somewhere else. So and there is no formula exactly how to do things, so you have to be quite creative in order to do things. I mean, for example, when we did our the tanks that we have on the stage, they're Walter and Audi, we're two of them. They were relatively quick to design, but they were extremely difficult to create mechanically, because they needed to do so many things that you don't normally necessarily think about.
And you got to be able to make them small to package them to transport them. That's got to be included in the design as well.
They needed to be able to go through a small doorway.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to be packed in cases. They needed to be transported, and they needed to have a crazy drummer sitting and shaking everything around, and which puts a lot of stress onto all the bolts and all the metal inside of them.
Yeah, it's a bit different from a regular tank.
in these cases, we needed to find solutions that were not really there, and we needed to try it out. That was one thing. But you know, over the course of Sabaton,
We went and saw them in the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, and they were saying that as they were packing in the tank and getting it set up on stage, one of the historians for the Nashville Ryman Auditorium came up to them and said, "Well, this is a first. We've never had a tank in here. This is where they used to hold the country music, what do you call it, the Grand Ole Opry, and now they've got a tank sitting on stage." As he said, first time that's ever happened.
try it out. That was one thing. But you know, over the course of Sabaton history since the beginning,
See what he did there?
we have always been facing a lot of obstacles that we had no clear solution to. You see, Sabaton hails from a pretty small town where there was no at all industry for touring artists, and nobody around to tell us anything, and we also never signed to an international management.
Yeah, I don't think everybody, maybe I know a lot of your big fans realize, but you guys manage yourself. You don't have a management company. So.
No, and so we never had anybody to tell us and fix things for us.
Right.
So we always had to find a solution. And our production manager that has been with us since 2006, he's like one of our childhood friends. And together with him, we always had to find the solutions ourselves.
Okay.
No matter if it was, how do we actually route it from A to B to go from there to there on the tour? Do we need to do it by ship, air freight, or by land? And we needed to find solutions to that. And how do we find a solution when there is we don't have enough power? What do we do?
Okay.
How can we cut down? Can we steal power from somewhere? Yeah, maybe we can plug one of our amplifiers into the electricity outlet of the local laundry machine and find a way to make our amplifiers sound good that way.
Yeah.
So these were always the entire thing was always dependent on it.
Well, you mentioned about touring, getting from point A to point B. That's how the Sabaton cruise came about. We mentioned that in one episode. That was because you had to rent the whole boat because it was cheaper than whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
A bit of our inventive skills.
Yeah, but that
to
turned out
solve a
great.
solution, to find a solution to a problem, and it turned out pretty great.
Well, speaking of touring and stuff like that, you must have had, I mean, with so much stuff and such big productions and just the life of the realities of the world, you must have had a hard time getting into countries or out of countries and stuff. And I'm assuming, I don't actually know. Have you ever had to do creative problem solving or solutions for something like this?
Yes, there's always this. I mean, and you might think that it gets easier with time, but there's always new challenges, especially as we bring more and more stuff. We have some various things. I mean, nowadays it's not so much that you need to bribe borders to get across and stuff like that, but that used to be there.
Yeah.
And we just had to improvise how we got past that, or how we solved a solution when they accused us of smuggling drugs or stuff like that, which we obviously don't do.
Right.
But they happily accuse us of it so that they can have an upper hand in the negotiation of how much they're gonna get paid in order to let us pass through without going through the days' works of paperwork nightmare that they would throw us through in case.
Yeah, you can either give us $20,000 or we can spend 2 days unpacking your entire truck and going through everything to make sure that you're not bringing in any contraband. What do you guys want to do? Yeah, pretty much held them over the barrel.
We would not comply to their terms.
Sure.
So these were things, and we had nobody to tell us how we did it.
Yeah.
So we had to find our own. Luckily, we are quite friendly and quite nice people to talk to.
Oh yeah, totally.
So we usually find a way to do that. But yeah, there was some things. I mean, we never will forget how we got the tank in across the border into Serbia when they asked what we're carrying, and we said, yeah, we have this guitars, we have this, and then we have a tank. And they were like, so you're bringing a tank? Yeah, but it's not a real tank, it's a fake tank. And then, we need to see that, because who wants a fake tank?
Well, the crowd wants a fake tank. The crowd wants a real tank, to be honest.
Yeah, they probably won't, but we don't want to carry it around. It's a little bit too. But we did also investigate the option to bring a real tank to the tours or
Right.
to specific shows for other reasons than having it on the stage, which we have also investigated a couple of times.
Okay. What other reasons?
It would be cool if at a festival where they're outdoors, if there was like an armored fighting vehicle comes rolling up and the door comes down and Sabaton comes out of the back of it. That would be awesome.
There has been times when Sabaton has been, like, say, starting the show, we transported ourselves through the crowd,
Yeah.
through military vehicles and stuff like.
Oh, exactly what I just said. I just spilled tea all over myself. Terrible. It's terrible. Can't spill the tea, man. All right, here we go.
that. And there was, how can we drive it onto the stage? And like, well, we can't really do that, but we can drive to the stage at least.
Okay, well, that's cool. But hey, something just struck me. Said if some foreign government, for whatever reason, accuse you guys of smuggling drugs, don't they have to like try to find drugs to accuse you of smuggling drugs? Or is it just to start the paperwork to delay everything?
Well, it's just their way of starting a negotiation. Like, hey, you are a rock band, you should be having drugs on board. And we would say, no, we don't use that. And then there will be like, but maybe you have. Can you? Otherwise, we maybe find it somewhere.
Maybe find it.
Maybe they find something, and that is obviously in being that they might plant it there and then find
Oh,
it.
Jesus.
Okay.
Which
I got that.
which is of course a very scary scenario that could appear. And
Imagine going to prison for that, for someone planting something on you.
we never wanted to take that risk to call their bluff on that.
I wonder if they're planning a tour. Do they have to actually build into the budget the money that we're going to have to pay people to bribe them for different scenarios like this? Is that actually factored into the budget when they sit down and plan out how much everything's going to cost? That's crazy. I never thought about that before.
So we always had to find a solution to that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's more. It's definitely not like that. Every time we cross a border, everything has been pre-advanced. We have already good connection to higher instances.
You're
and,
bigger now, so yeah.
So now we have already did all the work. So we usually go quite smoothly across the borders.
And you tend to go. A lot of the countries you go to are countries you've been to at least once, if not many times before, right?
Yeah, well, there's always something new that, shows up, and sometimes there are new borders created.
Oh yeah, of course.
And new challenges.
Yeah.
Corona presented us with some challenges that we needed to get through.
Oh, I remember when we were shooting, when you were in the episode and you're in Moscow and you had the guys climbing down the outside of the building.
Yeah, that was one thing.
That was How long were you stuck in Moscow?
About half a year.
Wow.
And in the country as a whole, was that half a year or just Moscow half a year?
No, I stayed there most of the time.
Wow. And
obviously there was not so much easy to travel at that time.
And that's funny because just 2 months before that, you and I had been filming in Minsk.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, you're trapped in Moscow. Wow.
And that presented us with challenges that we overcome.
Yes, we did.
They should have wrote a book. That would have been an interesting read.
Yeah, so we're up there with Wernher von Braun and the rest of the gang, yeah? Wait, that's probably not who I want to compare myself to. Well, I got the jacket, so this is actually yours. I like the Velcro on it, that's very scientific, the Velcro here. It's got Velcro, and it's got snaps, and it's got buttons, so you can seal this jacket three times.
You know why?
Why?
Again, it's an invention.
Okay.
It's a solution. We need one of the crew members to wear this on the stage.
Yeah.
He needs quickly to change clothes.
Yeah.
And then, but it still needs to have the buttons, so it looks buttons, because this obviously wouldn't be, the Velcro wouldn't be correct. So we just added that on top of the buttons in order to be able to change
They should
clothes
start using
quickly.
Velcro because it's more better for your hands when you got gloves and stuff than the snaps and stuff. Wow. Well, that was a very interesting little discussion, was it not?
Yes.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from us today.
Yep. Here on the Sabaton History channel, or as you said,
Sabaton Science Channel. See you next time.
thanks for watching. That was awesome, right? So please subscribe to our channel and click that little bell so you get notifications the next time we release another episode of Sabaton History channel.
All right, yes. Please subscribe to Sabaton History, and if you can afford to support their work on Patreon, go over there and support Sabaton on Patreon. This was very informative to me. I learned a lot about Wernher von Braun's history. I learned about Nobel's history, which was very eye-opening to me. I don't think I knew anything about the history of Nobel. So now I'm ready to play some more Jeopardy with my sister and have some more weapons in the arsenal to come at her with. So that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction. I don't do a lot of Sabaton reactions nowadays. They're not really putting out a lot of new stuff, so I'm just kind of waiting for that next album to come out. So come on, guys, put out some new work for us and the fans out here in the field. We want some new music, and looking forward to Mr. Thorbjørn England coming back on board to join the group, and wish Tommy Johansson all the best in his endeavors going forward. We love you, Tommy, and you're an inspiration to us all. Anyway, so that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button down below. Doesn't cost you anything. Makes me feel good when people like our videos. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I got a massive Sabaton backlog you can come check out. Shoot, I don't think I've done over 80, 90 Sabaton reactions in the past. Seen them live, all that kind of stuff. Got to meet the band, all that stuff. So come check that out on the Sabaton playlist on the channel. After you hit the subscribe button, hit that bell off to the side. It'll let you know anytime I drop some new content over here on the channel. And if you're the type of person that likes to support a small channel trying to grow on YouTube, there's a Patreon link up in the corner and down below in the description. Shout out to all the patrons who help support the channel. We love you guys. Thank you for all your support. That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And for anyone who stuck around here to the very end of this video, I appreciate you stopping by. And don't forget to come on back. If you enjoyed this video, the YouTube algorithm that knows everything else you'd like says that you'll also like this video right here. Come check it out.